Join me on this rainy drive home, which it seems like it may actually be stopping raining. Cool. Anyway, I want to talk about something that no one talks about. And I don't understand why really, but maybe there's some risk. I don't know. I really don't know. And that's insurance. Because growing up, no one ever taught me about insurance. No one told me this is how things work. And if I wanted to learn about something, I'd do that on my own. I had to figure it out for myself. And I had to experience things that didn't, I never knew. And had I known, maybe I could have done it better. So everyone, for the most part, has to have car insurance. There are some states that don't require you to have it. But for the most part, everyone has to have it. And most people don't understand it, and they just go by like basic liability, enough to keep them legal, and they drive. And I'm here today to tell you that's not a good idea. Because I've been there. I've done that. Back when I didn't have a very expensive car, I didn't carry anything other than liability. I did the state minimum, which I think is like $30,000 coverage. I mean, it's really not a lot. And you could be in a really, really bad spot if anything were to happen with the basic coverage. Liability covers you. If you hit someone else and it's your fault, it will pay for their car to keep you from getting sued. Problem is, if your limit is $30,000 and you hit a Tesla that's $100,000, guess what happens if you can't cover the damage? They sue you. So even though you have liability coverage to cover up to $30,000 of the damage, that's great, but it doesn't cover all the damage. And so if the person who owns the car can't afford to fix it themselves and can't afford to just take the hit on their own insurance, they'll come after you for that amount of money. And rightfully so. They really should come after you, because if it's your fault, you need to pay for it. I've been in situations where, I had to rely on my own insurance because the other person's insurance wouldn't cover it, or they just didn't have insurance. And that's, honestly, it's more trouble than it's worth to sue them, but they really should be sued. And I didn't get the opportunity because, it really didn't work out like that. I don't want to comment on the situation because it may still be pending litigation. I'm still within the, statute of limitations on that. So we'll talk about that one later. But anyway, liability will cover any damage you cause to other people's property, and other people up to an extent, because it does cover like their medical bills, etc. It doesn't cover you and your car at all. And that's where we get into, when you get a newer car, you tend to carry full coverage so that you have your car covered. But before I continue, let me just say that you're probably not going to do any harm to yourself by taking the maximum liability you can possibly get. And that's what my buddy Avery did. He told me about, this is what I've decided to do. And I'm like, I should look into that. And I looked into it, and it's exactly what I decided to do. The absolute maximum coverage you can have, liability. Now, with my company, I think it's like 500,000 coverage or something. But that ensures that you're going to be covered. You damage a big, expensive Lamborghini, well, it's covered. And the owner gets hurt while you're in the wreck, well, they're covered. So, there's no chance, there's little chance of you getting sued in that situation, because everything's paid for. And when the money's paid, they don't care. There's no like, well, I'm also going to sue you for pain and suffering. They might do that. But, not saying you're not going to get sued, but you're going to get sued for a lot less. Let's put it that way. It's all about protecting yourself, which is what insurance is there for, protecting you. Granted, if you use it, it's going to skyrocket, but, in the meantime, it is a protection for you. So my suggestion, carry the maximum liability you possibly can. Even if you're only going to carry liability, do it. If you're going to carry more than liability, still the maximum. That's the only way to do it, because otherwise you're at risk. It may not cover it. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but $30,000 I don't know that I've passed a car yet worth less than $30,000 on this road home right now. Yeah, that one's definitely worth more. That one, maybe that was a Ford Fusion, an older one, so maybe that would be under the $30,000 mark. Yeah. So let's get into the next level of coverage, because like I said, you buy a newer car, you typically tend to carry full coverage. Well, you can carry, and it depends. Some states, some insurance companies do it different, but you can carry, in most cases, comprehensive or collision or both. So you can choose, do you want one or the other or both? But no one really understands what is what. So comprehensive is coverage to damage that happens outside of your control, like theft and natural disasters. Your car's in a flood, or it was picked up in a tornado. Any kind of something you really can't control. Glass, all your glass is covered under comprehensive, even if you hit a deer, for example, and it only busted your window. Don't know how that would happen, but it only busted your window. The window would be replaced under comprehensive because it is glass damage. Glass damage is covered under comprehensive. In my personal opinion, I like to carry a zero deductible, or the lowest I possibly can, on my comprehensive, because glass, that's the biggest one. Anything glass that is covered can be covered for free if you have a zero deductible. Otherwise, if you have a $1,000 deductible, it may just be cheaper to replace your glass instead of using the insurance. Way too high. Collision is the other type of coverage that you can get, and that is coverage for anything that collides with your vehicle, and it's kind of a mixed bag. So mainly it's if it's your fault. If you hit something, it's your fault, then collision will cover any damage to your vehicle. Liability still kicks in for anything you damaged during the accident, like someone else's car or their house or whatever. But for the most part, damage that you're responsible for that involved a collision. It's a very specific type of coverage, but they group a lot of things into it. You could say, well, I hit a deer, and then they'll say, well, you hit the deer, that was a collision, you were in control of the vehicle, so now we won't cover it if you don't have collision. At the same time, if you didn't have comprehensive, they could just say, oh, well, it was a deer, it was an animal, so that's comprehensive, we won't cover it. So insurance companies will play games to try to get out of things, and it can be a headache. That's their goal. Their goal is not to lose money, their goal is to make money. So if there's any way they can get out of paying, they're going to. Best advice, carry the maximum you possibly can. Now, your collision is, your deductible is subjective, whatever you want to cover. However, remember, they'll use tactics to try to get out of it. So if your comprehensive coverage is zero deductible, but your collision is $1,000 deductible, well, you hitting that deer was a collision, 100%. We're going to need that $1,000 deductible. They'll do whatever they can. So I actually make mine match. I carry, if I can carry zero, I will. If not, I do 50, the lowest I possibly can carry on the deductible. The cost, if you break it down into a monthly cost, I think it's like $4 a month. It's really not that much more expensive to carry the lowest deductible you possibly can, so it's not that big of a deal. There are other instances that you would need coverage, but again, most states have a mandatory minimum of that coverage that you should carry, like uninsured or underinsured motorist. That again covers you in the most part, because if someone hits your car and they don't have insurance, then it would fall back on your uninsured or underinsured coverage to pay for your car. That is another gotcha, really, because you would think they hit my car, that would go on their liability. Well, if they don't have the money to cover my car, I have full coverage. If your full coverage doesn't include underinsured or uninsured, you don't have full coverage. You'd have no coverage for damage someone else did to your vehicle in the instance that they couldn't afford or couldn't didn't have enough coverage to pay for your vehicle. Most states have a minimum on that you must carry, a minimum whatever. I didn't extend that. I didn't go bigger than it was supposed to be minimum, just because, like, you know, I am pretty well aware of how all this works, and I am not the kind of person that wants my insurance to pick up where someone fell short. I want to be able to go after that person for falling short, because it is their responsibility to pay for my car if they damage it. Now, if I damage my car, well, then it's my responsibility to pay for my car. So, yeah, that's just a brief explanation of different insurance coverages and how they work, and, you know, what should you carry, in my opinion, at least. I do carry just about everything. Now, there are other coverages that they offer, like towing and labor and all this. Nah, I don't do all that. I mean, if you really need towing coverage, you can pick up AAA. But honestly, I've used a tow truck maybe twice in the past 15, 20 years. I haven't needed one. And in most cases, I mean, say you're on the side of the road, you get a flat tire, you can pay a roadside service to come out and change that tire for you without needing to have coverage for it. You end up paying more in coverage than you would just paying them to come out and change your tire. So, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to carry that. And I think the other one is for, like, you know, if your car mechanically breaks down, they have levels of coverage. Again, the insurance companies are out to make money. They're not out to pay out a ton of money. So, those are unneeded, unwanted coverages that you're going to waste money on. I wouldn't do it. So, yeah, you know, this may not be 100%, because, you know, like I say, it's a lot to know, a lot to remember, and all I know is what I've done my own research on, and then trying to remember, like, how things have gone in the past to, you know the answer to some of this stuff. So it may not be 100%. You should do your own research and not rely 100% on what I say as fact. One other thing I wanted to mention was your rates going up. Through my own research, if the amount that your claim is for is less than $1,800, usually you don't see an increase. But if it goes over $1,800, you will see an increase almost all the time. Each insurance company is different, and, you know, they're going to do it different ways. I know with Allstate, I had the worst possible situation because, you know, someone hit my car, they left. It was a hit and run, but I had no proof of who it was, no information about them. It was basically me. I had to fix it. And so it went on my underinsured or uninsured motorist because it was hit and run, and they had no way of knowing who did it. And because the damage was over $1,800, I seen an increase in my rates, even though it wasn't my fault. And that was a big pain in the neck, because had I known my insurance was going to increase the amount that it did for the next 3 to 5 years, I don't remember exactly how long it was. I think it was 3, but I probably would be better off just paying out of pocket to fix the car, because, I mean, honestly, it was only like $2,000. It wasn't much over the 1,800 mark, but that 1,800 mark pushed it over. On the other side of that, if you're ever, you know, in an accident that's not deemed your fault and the other party is paying for it, go ahead and get the most you possibly can. You know, I don't know, I'm sure it has changed now, because now they want to know, where are you taking the car, and blah, 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 blah. But back in the day, you could go to 3 or 4 different places and get estimates. And granted, you didn't have a loan on the car, you could just submit the most expensive estimate and not get the car fixed. It wasn't insurance fraud, because that's the amount, the damages that were caused. And because you didn't have a loan on the car, you're not obligated to get it fixed. You can drive it with the damage if you want to. Now, if there's a loan on the car, you have to get it fixed. Anymore, I've noticed it doesn't really work like that. All the shops and repair facilities will bid low. They will bid way under what it actually costs to repair the car. And once they've got your car and they're working on your car, they can submit with the insurance company a amendment or whatever they call it for more money. And that's how it's worked the past 2 or 3 times I've done it with working with any kind of repair facility. They work directly with the insurance to get more money, and yeah. But in the event that you're not at fault, if they're paying to fix your car, they also are required to provide you a rental. And they may not offer that. You have to tell them, hey, you need to give me a rental. And they are responsible for paying for that rental during the time that your car is being fixed. Another big thing that people tend to overlook is diminished value. And most insurance companies will tell you straight out, we don't do diminished value. Yeah, you do. You may not want to do diminished value, but when I threaten to get an attorney involved, you do diminished value all of a sudden. That's crazy. Yes, they do diminished value. Now, if you're driving a really old car and it didn't really lose a whole lot of value, you're not going to get anything. But if you drive a fairly new car, a damage on its history report is diminishing to its value, and it's up to them to determine, what a fair amount of diminished value would be, because that car was never wrecked and now it is. And that's all things that you can argue. Even when your car is a total loss, the method for them getting the value of the car at a total loss is to look for cars with the same trim, same features, same mileage within a certain distance of you for sale today, and go off the average of those vehicles listed for sale. So if I bought this Rivian for $79,000, for example, and there were only 3 listed for sale in my area at $150, well, guess what? It's worth $150. That's the market value right now. Now, they may try to get out of that, but that's what it is. And those are also things you can dispute if you don't agree with the amount. Just know that if the amount is close and you disagree with it, you may shoot yourself in the foot, because they may pull a further distance. And, well, there's Rivians up in Virginia for $80,000. So now it's not worth $150, or say they offered way less, $120. Now it's worth $80. That's not good. So you got to pick your battles. And which ones do you want to fight on that one? But that's about the best I can do as far as telling you how insurance works, and all that. Like I say, there may be some things that aren't 100% here, because this is just information I've collected over the past 20 years of dealing with insurance, having insurance. You may find a better deal in one place, but it may not be very good coverage. So you gotta pick your battles on that. Allstate, I felt like was really good coverage, but when they raise your rates on a simple little claim, and then I dropped them because I'm like, I can't pay that. Went to Geico, and now I can't go back to Allstate. They won't have me. Every time I ask for a quote, they just say, we can't offer you a quote. It's like, okay, cool. Geico, I've heard some horror stories. I have them now, and for the most part, I've had no issues with getting payouts if, something I actually need done. They covered my Tesla whenever the tree fell on it, and that was a pretty painless process. Now, that's another one I forgot to mention. If you don't carry rental coverage on your car and it's not someone else's fault, it goes back on your own coverage, and if you don't have rental coverage, you don't get a rental. So I did not get a rental for that because I didn't pay for rental coverage. I felt like it was an unneeded coverage, really. Paid for my own rental and just went that way, so it wasn't a big deal. But in the event that it's someone else's fault, whether or not they have rental coverage, their liability will cover you and your rental. So no big deal. Anyway, that's it. See you guys later.